Okay, we are on and ready.
Yay, I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad we're finally doing this.
Yes,
It's a
I'm
big step
Mich
for both of us.
It is
So,
a big step. So, hey, I'm Michelle McGinnis. I'm happy to be here. I am excited to be working with Brittany on this and getting ourselves into a space of like connection in ways that we do privately and with our clients, but not necessarily out in public like this, right?
exactly. And hi, everyone. I am Brittany, and I am a channel and an intuition development teacher. And I'm just excited to be here to share some of the amazing, fun messages that both Michelle and I get to receive. And we just wanted to jump on and really enjoy sharing some of these messages with everyone. So we're all glad you're here. And yeah, so let's jump into it. Today, we're going to be really working with the divine feminine energy and bringing that in from different collectives. We have a couple of specific collectives that we work with pretty consistently.
Mhm.
Um, but for the divine feminine coming in, there's actually kind of a new group forming to help us support the divine feminine on Earth right now and really allowing that to become activated. Um, Something I want to mention though is this isn't about necessarily taking away from the masculine that's here. It's just about healing the masculine and really embodying both the divine feminine and the divine masculine and really bringing those energies together to create much more of a peace and joy and just general tolerance and cooperation with each other, knowing that we all can balance these energies within each of us. So just wanted to throw that little caveat in here. And yeah, so we'll get started.
It was really good.
So, Miss Michelle, is there
Mhm.
anything like message wise that you want to share that's kind of coming through for you?
It was interesting when you were talking about the divine or the masculine. All of a sudden, I felt something like flip in my throat, like it was pronounced. I've never felt that before.
Oh,
So I don't know. I don't know if it's just an activation. I don't know if it's just like a clearing of something. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but that was quite different.
yeah, that is different. I love that. I know that's something like about channeling that a lot of people don't always know is that it channeling really like changes you because you're tapping into a very different frequency than we're used to. So the energies that we tap into change us on our fundamental level. A lot of people talk about this, like Bashar and like Daryl Anka talks about this a lot, like how,
Mhm.
even though he's not necessarily conscious for his channeling, right? He does trance channeling, that they are, those messages still embed in him and that energy is still within him. And so he's actually changed and fundamentally shifted his own life even just by sharing the messages that he shares. So that's kind of cool. So it's whatever we just tapped into was just like, oh, we're gonna wake up Michelle a little bit.
Yeah,
And
this is interesting.
yeah, so plus, it's just the whole idea of having the divine masculine is
Mm,
equally as important as the divine feminine. And that is something that I think gets lost right now because we have a very wounded masculine that has maybe more what we conceive of as power, right? We see it as being power. And so the divine masculine is coming in as well, actually, to say,
mhm.
hey, you know, the divine masculine supports the divine feminine and the divine feminine supports the divine masculine. It's very balanced. It's not about one having power over the other. It's working in tandem to reach a united idea, right?
Yes, yes.
And that's something that I think our world, I mean, I know specifically in the US, that's something that we struggle with is having this like, the patriarchy versus the matriarchy, and it's not really about one or the other. It's about bringing balance and healthy creation and understanding to both, right?
Yeah, and kind of like value systems that are shifting, right? Within,
Yeah.
I love how you said the divine masculine and the divine feminine, because it is true. We need both, and we know that, right?
Mhm.
And I think that in my years as I didn't introduce, but I am a channel, but I'm also a life and business coach, and I was a social worker for a long time. And I think that what I discovered was in my growing up that, like you were saying, like there didn't seem to be a sense of what I would consider the divine masculine. It wasn't represented a lot. It was I'm the rule. I am
Mhm.
which makes it really difficult. I think that's why, in some senses, it's difficult, I think, for some men in the culture to even understand what divine masculinity really is because it feels sometimes like power's being pulled away from them. It
Yeah.
could be. It's not for everybody because not everybody feels this way. But I would say in the general bulkness, sorry, I gotta put my focus on, the general bulkness of all of that, it really does feel like it needs to have its own time. But we as women, I think, still are on the rise of understanding our own power. And that will only allow the divine masculine to see their power because they don't have to keep pushing and doing the things that they don't like either, which is not something that we talk a lot about, which is kind of interesting.
No, I totally agree. And actually, most men, I think because they suppress a lot of the feminine aspects of themselves, they find themselves imbalanced in that, right? So they do become more like power hungry or assertive or like, oh, this is my way or the highway kind of stuff. And it's like, well, that's not a true representation of the like of men, quote unquote, right? Obviously, I know that's being a little general. But and I know there's a lot of other ways to, identify nowadays. I'm not trying to say that there's only one way, but just in that traditional sense that, you know, the more that we heal that divine feminine, it also activates within, all genders. And so
Yes,
we're able to
yes.
then recreate that balance, whatever that looks like. And because when we own ours, right, it allows them to own theirs. And because we've also suppressed ours just as much.
Hmm.
So just reactivating that, it's reactivating, I think, for everyone, not just like us individually, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
I kind of love that we we can see that because I have met like actual men who are very much in there who have the ability to balance the divine feminine and masculine. It's not something you see all the time, but it is possible, and I've seen it, and it is lovely to witness because you're like, oh wow, look at that, somebody who's willing to be vulnerable and open and even maybe a little intuitive and and then also having that like strong like ability to back the feminine and say, oh yeah, whatever we got to do to get this done, like go for it. And it's beautiful to watch that dynamic, which that's not something that's very common right now. Like in our world we don't see that, even hardly at all. I mean, across the world even, but there's probably some places that are a little bit better at it than the US, but there's still a lot of countries and a lot of places that don't have that balance either.
Yeah, I have two boys. That's what I had. And they're both young men. And it's interesting because it was before I knew human design, but I knew that they were highly sensitive young men. And it's interesting because when they both met their partners that they're currently with, they both pulled me aside individually and said, "Thank you for raising such sensitive young men that you didn't squish that." And as a parent, it's the best compliment you can get, right? And secondly, I got a lot of crap for it, raising my kids differently.
Oh, you did.
Yep, from my family, from some of our close friends at the time. Um, but there was just an instinct of cocooning. And I did. There were certain times in their lives I wouldn't let them go certain places with certain people because I had a sense that some of that stuff would try to get kicked out of them. And so I understand parents who are like, it's hard to raise poised in some ways to be more of that balance, but it's easier. It's getting easier. And it only takes a few people, right? To like work on something to open up that flow. You think about the 4 minute mile person and how that was really big back in, I think, 1941, when somebody ran the 4 minute a mile in 4 minutes. And now it's the standard. Like if you don't meet that or go beyond that. So I feel as if, listen, I hope that didn't sound braggadocious because that's not what I meant by that, by talking about my boys. But when you were talking, I'm like, wait a minute, my boys are they're really sensitive. One's a reflector, so he's wide open. He's gonna be
Oh yeah.
highly sensitive to things, right? And it bothers him that he is that sensitive. So there's the other side of like conditioning cultures and people to understand like when he's crying, he's processing the emotions in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
As we women are doing sometimes,
Yeah, I think
processing
that's
emotions in the
beautiful.
moment. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, thanks for that reality check for me.
Yeah. No,
But
and I
that's a
love
good
that.
thing. Yeah.
And it is hard to raise. I mean, even sensitive women are, it doesn't really matter. It's just sensitivity in general is looked down upon so much. And like the more that you actually embrace those sensitivities, I think that makes it just more on point to, because it's really not about like, we talk about it and it sounds like we're just talking about gender, but it's like really just about what traits that is, right? Whether it doesn't matter what gender you are, it's just about what traits do you exhibit, right? And what traits are you suppressing in yourself that those sensitivities that you're ashamed of, or, being, highly intuitive and feeling like, oh, I'm weird, which is something I know like we've all, probably struggled with at some time. Like,
Yeah, right?
I mean, like, I know I have, but it's just interesting to see. It's like just opening up, right? It's more of just like an opening
Hmm.
and like an allowing of new things to come in and old things to move, and like just a shift in the energy, and you can feel it and you can see it because it
Yeah.
is nice. Like you have, more and more people in general who are more attuned to their sensitivities, who are tuned into like their, I've seen even very like masculine men who are coming on saying like like doing tarot readings, like or doing intuitive work, and they're like legitimately doing it, not just like, they're not making a joke out of it. Like that's something that they're passionate about, something that's enjoyable for them. And I love seeing the combination of like everybody's kind of just stepping into these new roles, and like not roles but like shifting and kind of defying the way that we've always done things, right? And like just that's how we change it, right? Is by questioning and kind of going against the grain.
Well, and you
That's
look at people who can't even identify as male or female, you know what I mean? And for some people, that was such a big ruckus. For me, it's like, this is awesome. They're practicing something different that we don't
yeah.
have words for. We just don't have words for it. And a lot of the times, the English communication is just that. It doesn't have words for what people are experiencing. And so I love that because it does show that in some sense, I think it's extremely like brave. I've always found, because I think that's the thing that I've always had to work through in my
Yeah.
silly little life, right? But it wasn't silly to me, and I'm not demeaning myself, but like every time I have a growth spurt, like even coming on and talk about channeling, like, wow, that was a big thing. But you think about the other things that other people have had to come up with that is so far for some people way out there that they can't grasp it. So I love that because to me, that's showing also how living on a planet, because this is one of the messages that came through the Divine Feminine a couple weeks ago, and I think you and I talked about was this idea that we live on planet Earth, and planet Earth is a healing planet. She is a healer herself. And like everything that we exist upon is on the earth. So we have this potential of growth and seeding something new all the time and then releasing to her all the time. It just sometimes when they come through in the channeling and they say it, like it's speaking to you or whatever you want to believe the frequency is or whatever you're feeling. But I thought that was such a, I know that. I understand earthing. I understand, grounding, all that. But then to have that energy speaking like, but you understand that's what I do all day, every day for everyone who's willing and needs it. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like having the medicine right next to your bed and you forget that the medicine's there, but you sit in the misery of something instead of saying, oh, it's like right there. Like,
Yeah,
does that make
exactly.
sense? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and I love that message because you're right. I mean it's called Mother Earth, right? So it is like it's interesting because it is very much already kind of that like nurturing, I mean, in nurture nature, like it's very much entwined and it is, so healing for us. And it's something that we've, like we've kind of turned our back on Mother Earth in a lot of ways. I think we're obviously coming back to it, right? A lot of people are coming back to, how we treat the earth and, also really connecting with the earth, which is great, right? But
Yeah.
I love
It,
that message that you shared.
yeah. And if I can just insert one more thing about the earth too, really quick, because
Mhm.
we got to remember that the frequency it gives off naturally is what the hertz of 417, or is it 423? I always get it wrong. Somebody will correct us.
Yeah.
But in that, we understand that that frequency truly is the frequency of healing. So that's how we know she's communicating to us in that way. I'm the healer. And she also gives birth to everything on earth, right? She is the womb for all of us to create whatever we want to create, right? So it's like, and sometimes, you know how sometimes you hear things, I've heard this for the last 30 years of my life, but there was just something in the way that they spoke at that time, or she spoke at that time, that it just clicked in a really more profound way of, this is the learning place. We've heard that about planet Earth, right? That this is the learning planet, the educational planet. And so you think about that every time we're learning and growing and expanding, it means we have to release, we have to acknowledge and let something transmute itself. And who transmutes it but the energies of the earth, because it's around us constantly. I'm kind of blown away. This was a couple of weeks and I still sit with this and it's like, isn't that amazing that that's provided for us on without even asking, just like the divine feminine always is, right? It's always willing to produce and nurture something in the darkness of a womb and then feed it what it needs and to feel like, I know something's coming. I don't know what it's going to look like. Like that's what she's doing constantly for us. And it's kind of like so above, so below. But I don't know. Maybe I got way out there, but I felt like
Oh,
that needed to be said.
yeah. And I think what you said was beautiful because what you really alluded to was like the unknown, right? Birthing something you don't actually really see the whole picture of. And
Yeah.
just that kind of unconditional love that comes from holding that space for something to just grow unconditionally. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of people on earth struggle with, like, not having that real mothering aspect because most women are not really that mothering. There probably are quite a few that are amazing at it and have the ability to like guide their kids through it, but there are a lot of women that, or parents in general, that don't have the ability to really
Mm.
look through that and hold that space. So I think that's a beautiful message for someone who maybe can recognize like, oh, if I connect back in, like, there's some of us that maybe don't have parents
Mm.
in a sense. And so it's nice to know that like you do actually have a family. It just might not look like,
There we go.
right.
Very good, good, solid point.
Yeah. It just may not look like what you think. It may not be human family, right? And
Yes.
and that's something that's just, I don't know, I think that can really change people,
Mhm.
just like understanding that bigger connection. And because relationships are difficult on this planet, right? And so it's nice to see. Like, I loved your message. That was very nice. Obviously, I'm getting emotional. That's just me.
And I
That's
love that.
one of my sensitivities. So I'm just going to show it. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you are showing it. Yes, because for everybody, they identify with it differently. But just to know that you're living on a planet that loves and loves unconditionally. I mean, talk
Yeah,
about something that loves
yes.
unconditionally, that the shit that we put her through. And
I
she
know.
has she has her rumbles, right? And I think that just
Oh
knowing
yeah.
some of the the retrogrades and then the oh, what's the word? Squares that are happening right now, when this is September 2024, that, we could start to see between now and I want to say December, a lot more water weather patterns that she might be popping up. Um, and the cool thing is that I think that we might also be on the verge of seeing different ways in cleaning the water systems up. Like, I don't know about you, but in some of my other channeling sessions by myself, I've heard other people talk about it, the sense of that we think that cleaning up the pollution that is everywhere, and I'm just specifically talking about water right now, that we have this availability to use our own energetics in order to clean the water in a very quick way once we all believe that we have the power to do so.
No, I love that. I have heard of, there was, it was so many years ago. It was maybe like 10 years ago or something. I heard about this
Mhm.
little girl who was in another country. It was like somewhere in like maybe Northern Europe. And she was able to actually completely change the molecular structure of water. Like
Yeah.
it was amazing to hear that story. I was like, that is so beautiful, you know? And yeah.
So there's proof of it becoming more and more. And Dr. Yamoto, he's crossed over. He's a great example of it. But there's another young lady, and I can't think of her name. She was on Gaia TV with Regina Meredith, if anybody watches that. And she actually now knows how to do what Dr. Emoto did, but without having the big scientific uh, what's the thing that you can look at germs and stuff in it? Microscope,
The
words
microscope.
gone. So I actually practiced it a few times and I haven't done it on a consistent basis, but I bought some Petri dishes, some glass ones, and I took water on it and I blessed the water and then I put a word underneath it and I put it frozen. And one of the first ones I did, I put the word love underneath of it. And you put a certain amount of water in it, you put it in your thing, make sure it's stable, you shut it. And there's a certain period of time, again, it's been about 6 months since I've done it. In fact, I probably still have the pictures. I pulled it out and there was a heart in it. And I'm like, see, we are more powerful than what we realize already. That's got to be part of the divine feminine, of understanding the power that we have. I mean, as the divine feminine, we understand the power of the gift of life, right? And we're constantly creating within our systems. And that has nothing to do with having children, by the way. And it doesn't take away from the men. I think there are a lot of men who understand they also too have kind of like a divine womb within them, but that
Mhm.
hasn't been talked about. And it's not my area either of knowledge. But I love that because it does show how much power we have in everything that we do.
Yes, exactly. And I love that too, because what that really shows too is that, like, I love the intentions behind what you were doing. So a lot of people think that power is like manipulative and dominating, and, you know, and it's like that's not real power. You know, real power is the intention and the like love that you have behind it, right? So the more that we embody both of the like that feminine energy part, it really allows us to not have that same relationship to power, because we understand where it really comes from. It comes from that place of unconditional love. It comes from that place of like, I I can do this, right? But it comes from a very soft place instead of like, I have to do this, right? This is the only way to survive. And that's that like really wounded aspect that, you know, it's that survival mode that we've all been very accustomed to. I mean, and honestly, our history, that makes sense, right? I understand why it is that we have that that built into us, because it is survival mode. Like Earth is a very rough planet to live on, and there's a lot of war, or there used to be much more, right? There was wars constantly, it was very much like it's very primal. And now
Hmm.
we've evolved into such a different place where it's less about survival and really more about, you know, bringing in another aspect. And that kind of goes into like our evolution and shifting the frequency of the planet, because she's already shifting and changing, we're just along for the ride. And we're going with her, and she's taking us with her. And I think that is just beautiful, that it that power of that intention, where she's like, yeah, but you're coming with me. Like, it's just a very endearing, but that's true power, right?
Hmm.
Allowing and shifting and showing people change, right? Showing people unconditional love and being like, okay, but you're coming with, yeah.
Yeah,
And just that journey that it takes to really move through those aspects, right?
100%. Totally agree. I think that it's interesting when I was talking with the earth and how she was communicating that, there's more magic on this planet than what we truly believe in yet, even those that do believe in it, right? Like there's magic on the daily, but we become complicit, we become accustomed, and then we forget, like just walking outside and seeing the millions of leaves or blades of grass.
Right.
I mean, that's just kind of and the amount of insects and bugs and birds and different cloud formations. I mean, that in itself is magic. Like that's magic. I mean, we all can recognize our Earth is beautiful.
It is.
It's kind of like because it's a learning planet, it can feel icky at times because we have not learned how to manage our emotions in a
Mhm.
way that serves a higher purpose, in my opinion.
Yes, agreed. That makes a lot of sense.
But we're getting there
Mhm.
because emotions are such a big key for all of us. That's why we came into a human suit, is to have that, or else we would still be etheric.
Right. Yeah,
We,
exactly. It's just another experience and another way to experience life, and, you know, just all that is.
yeah, very
But it
cool.
is beautiful, though. And I really liked what you said about it being magic, because the planet really is magical, and tapping into that magic and allowing that to like even flow through us, right, is also a very beautiful testimony to the earth, herself, because it's like, oh, when we tap into that magic part of ourselves, it's like that's kind of us joining with her, right? And allowing her to be with us and shifting and seeing the beauty, and like you said, the blades of grass and the leaves, and even just like hearing the wind go through the trees, or
Yeah,
watching
right.
the birds fly, and seeing things that just look so effortless, even, and it's just beautiful in its own simplicity.
And that we're a part of all of it. Do you remember that part I was telling you? I was outside and there was one wave,
One
leaf
leaf.
that was, yeah, to me, that's like magical. Like, right. I went outside, took a break. I've been promising myself, I've been keeping up with it, like getting more outside, doing my thing. I was in between clients. I went outside and I don't know, all of a sudden there was one leaf across the road and it was the only one. It was like waving. I'm like, oh my gosh, hey, how are you? And then I went into my egoic self and said, that's just the wind, right? And then all of a sudden the wind kicked up really quick. And I was laughing because I was like, oh, that's right. I'm kind of connected to everything. So, of course, that was the wind, but that one specific leaf that I chose to focus on, it got my attention. There is magic in that, right? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, you can choose to see the magic, or you can choose to brush it off. It's up to you, right? Of course, we have
Mhm.
free will, but I think just the more we choose to see that magic, and be like, yeah, that was amazing. Like, what are the chances of one leaf waving at you on an
Right.
entire tree? Like that's pretty incredible. Why not celebrate that little moment, even if all it does is just bring a smile to your face. That's worth celebrating, right?
Yeah, and it shows that we are connected because I think that's a concept that we can say, but to actually like live it and then believe it and own it for yourself because it stopped waving. And that's what I said, well, if that was really real, you'll wave at me again, the doubting Thomas that I can be. And sure enough, then that's when the wind kicked back up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of forgot. Like, I do have. I think people have struggled with those type of concepts because people then think, oh, what do you think you're the controller of the universe? And the truth is, I am of my own universe.
Yes.
And I also commingle with everybody else that's on here controlling their own universes because everything that you're perceiving is that of which you have made up, just like it is in dreams. It's not any different here. The dream world, like, right, whenever I talk to, and I'm sure you do this all the time too, whenever I talk to people about their dreams, like there's three different types of dreams, right? But the one that comes across mainly on a daily purpose for everybody is people will be in your dream. Like you'll be dreaming about your mom or your best friend or someone from childhood. And the key is always to ask, what does that person, who does they give three words to describe who that person is? Because that's what that represents in your dream. You're probably processing something. So if it's your mom, you're like, I have a great relationship with my mom. I love her and she's generous. I'm like, okay, then that was you in the dream. Your mom represented that. So that who she was coming through, but it can't be you in all of the roles because your brain wouldn't know how to process that. Does that make sense? So again, even I forget it. I go outside sometimes or I'm interacting with people and I forget I'm you and you are me. And therefore it is my universe and how I want to perceive you. Oh shit, hold on. I totally forgot this. I had a message come in the middle of the night.
Oh, yes, please share it.
Okay. Very quick and concise, but it was be mindful because belief systems that you hold dear right now are about to shift. And it's funny because this is the third time in different ways I've heard that. And then they brought a specific person in my mind that I truly do not believe much of what this person says. And it's not judge, it just that's not my perception. And I don't, it doesn't bother me when somebody has a different perception of me, right? It
Mhm.
can. Let me not bullshit myself. It can, but I know how to manage it, right? Like, okay, yep, you go do you and do me. But they showed that person, and then that person saying something that actually matched my belief. And then all of a sudden I had to step back and say, oh crap,
Yep.
like the belief just got either blended or maybe I'm seeing the perception differently, or maybe I've got to walk through and hold my own belief. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think I'm supposed to know, but what do you think of that?
That is very interesting. So I think the answer will come to you. It's just that was just a nice little message about shifting that perspective, right? And seeing that when there's something in someone else that you don't like, it is
Yeah.
typically a reflection of your own belief systems, right? So
Yeah.
you can use that to amplify and shine light on that and be like, oh, where do I agree with that in myself, right? Where is that showing up in my life? And that's when you can really change it. But I loved that idea that, kind of shifting those belief systems, because belief systems, I think, are just levels of consciousness. And it's not like a hierarchy. It's just like everything exists simultaneously. And so when you pick up on one idea, right, all these other beliefs also exist. And so
Hmm.
it's not necessarily about losing beliefs, it's about shifting beliefs, right? So you have all of these like ideas and consciousness that you can tap into. And so I love that it was saying, like, hey, your belief systems are going to change because it's being reflected back to you what it is
Hmm.
that you prefer and what you don't prefer. Because you're right, it does come from us. Like, we are our own universe, right? We all coexist and we all co create together. But you in yourself are your own universe. It's just you could think of Earth as being like all the other people are other planets in your galaxy, right? So it's like we're all just, part of the greater cosmos, if you want to call it that. But looking deeper into that consciousness, but that's a beautiful message that came through. Like, I love the depth of it. And
I love it because they've been coming in, just really bold statements, and then I just get to observe and watch it come through. And as of late, they've been coming through pretty quick. Like all of a sudden, the belief of whatever, or the one that I had prior to that about a partnership changing, and it was going to change pretty abruptly, and then within an hour, the whole partnership had changed. But I'd heard it and seen it and understood it, right? And I love that because that's what you and I are always trying to teach people, right? It's like trusting those intuitive hits, but being able to take a second to hear it, to
yes,
remember it. And I didn't write that one down. Obviously, it just popped through again. Um, because within that, the change of consciousness, and I loved how you talked about that. A belief system is just at the level of where your consciousness point of direction is at. That was really good. That was really good.
yeah, I know that one's a tough one because it's, because we live on such a planet where we have so much diversity,
Mm-hmm.
all of these different ideas of concepts, which are basically just ideas or consciousness, are interpreted in so many different ways. Like the way that I see, like, I don't really believe that there is, you know, it's hard to explain, but like the definition of good and bad.
Right.
Well, it's like just because we define something as bad. Now, I'm not saying that my personal truth is like right because we each have our own ideas of what something is or isn't, right?
Right. Right.
So, not to be graphic, but someone who wants somebody else to not be alive anymore, they think they're doing some kind of service, right? They think that
Right.
it's good. Not
Right.
that that's correct necessarily
Right.
to maybe the rest of us, but in their own universe, that is correct.
Yes.
Not that we should like promote it or whatever, but I would say like just understanding that there are different levels of understanding and we don't necessarily have to encourage it, but we do need to recognize that everyone has a different level of seeing what is right or wrong, right? We all have our
Hmm.
own internal filters, our own internal universe, and how we process that. And so, as your belief systems change and grow, and obviously then like the healing portions come in too, right? Because if you're not willing to look at the things and shift your beliefs in your consciousness, that's a whole nother thing, right? That's kind of where maybe someone who would believe that they have the control to manage that situation the way that they did would be like, well, that doesn't make sense to a lot of us because that's just completely irrational, and maybe it is irrational, right? We don't really know, but the point is that the idea of right and wrong is really on a very very larger scale, not necessarily there, right? That idea of duality only exists because of how we define it to be, and this is
Yeah.
something that a lot
Mhm.
of people would probably be like, you're insane, but
No, because I think that's the way of the age of Aquarius, which we have literally just stepped one morsel step into is the age of Aquarius, which is you need to be your own individual, right? Figure out who the hell you are. Oh, I shouldn't have probably swore.
yeah,
Figure out who you are to the depths of who you are, and then don't be afraid to show up authentically as it. And to me, that's kind of like what you're talking about. Like if somebody has a belief system that they are nothing, they are less than, their behavior is going to exude that, right? And
mhm,
instead of us coming in to constantly condemn people,
right,
I mean, it's tough because death is still considered for a lot of people the final, and you and I don't consider it the final. And
yeah,
and
that's
I'm
true.
not taking away from that physicality and how difficult that is. Like if somebody does something to someone, that's that horrific, right? But it's kind of like the rehabilitation. Listen, I worked for the state in social work for a long time, and I truly understand the blocks that bureaucracy can put up for us, although it is also has got its great parts. But again, it's always that duality that comes up and how you're holding it. I like how you're saying that because it really is about how we're holding duality. Is it because we're saying you're right, I'm wrong, this is correct and this isn't? Or can we start to live in the duality of, oh, cool, that's what you believe. Awesome. That's what I believe. And we both can still talk and be
Yeah,
friendly
exactly.
and not try to coerce people into your belief system. That's
Yeah.
what I really do feel like when somebody's walking into their sovereignty, which by the way, I think that we walk in and out of it a lot, right? But when we're walking into it, we give people the permission to be themselves too, without knowing it's not harming, it's not taking anything away from me.
Yes, exactly. And that's I think where we have these like snap reactions and snap judgments is
Yeah.
because it comes from that place of like, well, you're, you know, more than one thing can't be true. And so when we have that like really like thin way of looking at things, you create that snap judgment and that snap reaction because there is like, well, I
So
can't exist
true.
if that exists, right? And so this
Yeah.
can't exist if this exists. And it's like, well, what if it just all existed, right? Just looking at it from a non-attached aspect, right? Regardless of, your personal beliefs about certain things, like what if we just looked at it from that detached area and then broke it down to, because we all obviously have to live on Earth together. Like we're all in this together.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the more we can find those like finite, kind of universal ideas, we can actually work together with them. But also the more that we all live in our authenticity, the less you're going to have those snap judgments, the less you're going to have those snap reactions because you don't have we understand that one can exist and so can the other, right? Because we
Yeah.
do live in a planet where we have a lot of existing things like coming forward, or, it's just you always are going to have something that's going to show you something different. We're not here to just create, everything all the same. Like you don't learn from that, right? You don't learn from being in a space where everything is the same all the time. Because if we didn't have that, one, it wouldn't even help us build our own beliefs and our own authenticity. And then two, it's like living in a vacuum, right? It's like, what good does that do? You know?
There's no growth in it. And I think too, that's the interesting part of that within diversity. I think I can understand why we need it because within it, it helps us to grow. It gives us that landing point. It's kind of like every generation has a glass ceiling and it's the next generation's job to crash through and keep moving up that glass ceiling, which means that there's a lot of learning that has to happen. And that's where we're at. It's such a massive growth. And I think people who are really struggling with anything, it's because they're uncomfortable with this idea of what if my belief changes because this is all I know and this is where I'm really, quote, comfortable. I think as people get older, they want to just get comfortable.
Yes.
I'm in that age group, right? And I think that's the one conversation I constantly have with my husband is that the minute I get too comfortable is the minute that I just need to croak because that's not who I came here to be, right? I always want to be that person who's growing and learning and 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 expanding my own beliefs because I think that's when people get cranky and crotchety and say you have to believe what I believe or say I don't even want to talk to you because I've dealt with you my whole life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just having that, understanding of like, I don't know, understanding like that deeper connection to the universe and understanding, I think it would just help people step into not seeing things so just like my way or the highway, right?
Hmm.
Which kind of loops back around to that like wounded masculinity.
Hmm.
We get comfortable and set in our ways when really we should be also allowing new things to come in. It's like it's okay that things change, even if they don't change the way we want them to, right? It's okay that things evolve because change and evolution are messy. Ah. there's anyone on the healing journey knows this more than anybody. You have to basically tear every little thing apart to rebuild yourself. And so, if that's
Yeah.
one thing, I think that a lot of people are, it's like we are afraid of that discomfort that happens in there, but it is extremely necessary to change how you really view the world and how you shift and live, right? Because if you want to live
Yes.
in like peace and happiness and you don't want to live in survival mode, then there are
Mm,
things you have to change. You have to be willing to see things and be a little uncomfortable. And, like you and I coming on here and doing a live, for example, like this is
mm,
something that maybe both of us weren't like 100% like, oh yeah, this sounds like fun. We're both a little hesitant, but at the same time, here we are, right? We're out here
mhm,
doing the things. And that's what it's going to take for a lot of us to really shift into this new energy that's coming in. And like you said, the age of Aquarius, and just allowing it to just move through us instead of
mhm.
feeling so like combative about it all and like fighting the change. It's just like, we're just going to go with it.
Along with that. Yeah. Because
Right?
then every
Find
time you do, there's more wisdom and there's more fun and there's more joy and there's more experiences. And you're like, oh my gosh, that was a great ride. But going through the ride is always a little scary. It's a little bumpy. It's like going on a
something.
roller coaster, right?
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
even I mean just like a life example, like I was at the lake this weekend and there was like this big boat that everybody was climbing on and like jumping off the roof of it, and it was
Mm,
a decent jump. And it's probably like 15 feet or so, which I mean maybe isn't a lot to some people, but like for me, like I don't really love doing those things. But I was like, that looks like fun. And then I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't, you know, I think I'm just gonna stay down here. And then, a bunch of my friends went up there and did it. And he was like, no, I'm not gonna chicken out. So I actually went up and did it, even though I was scared and I was uncomfortable. And I was like, nope, we're gonna do this. And it was actually a lot of fun. Like I
mm.
had a great time. It was fun. It was a good experience, and everything was fine.
That's
So
awesome. That's
it's
awesome.
like, but yeah, sometimes you have to do those little things, like just change it up a bit.
Hmm. Truly, truly, truly. Do you have any message do you have any like channel message that wants to come through, my dear?
Ah, sure, let's do it. Um, kind of going back to um like the personal power. Like this one is a big one that's coming up lately. And this message has come through for me so many times. And really just like speaking about leadership specifically is something that's been really coming through, because real leadership looks like being able to live in both of that, like divine feminine, divine masculine, right? So we know when to 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 kind of step back for a minute and observe, and we also
Hmm.
know when to take action, right? So when we are working with other people and becoming leaders, the restructure of the leadership that is coming eventually, it's not necessarily right now, but as like everything continues to shift on the planet, that restructure of leadership is going to look more like people just standing in their own power, and that holds space for others to be in theirs. And there is no competition. It is simply understanding that everyone has an expertise, everyone is a leader, and everyone is a follower,
Mm,
right? You are always the student and the teacher. You're never just one, because both are necessary for growth and understanding. And a true leader and a true teacher knows how to balance the two. So they know when to say, yeah, I think, taking this person's information and sifting through it and saying, yeah, I really like this. This is beautiful.
mhm,
Thank you. And also understanding that there are times to just be like, I am I am also an authority in this area, right? And then
Mm.
taking that and owning that, because I see so many people struggling with the ability to take action in their lives because they don't feel like their power is safe,
Yeah, I would
right?
agree with that. Hmm.
So they feel like they're going to misuse the power that they do have. Because I think most people understand that they do have it. They just don't know how to use it in a way that makes it feel safe for them because they don't understand. And so that's part of that restructure. And there's so much of this like talk about power and what that looks like, but it comes from inside, right? The
Mm.
power that you work with is love. It comes from your heart. That and understanding that it's okay to be patient, but it's also okay to take the lead sometimes. It's okay to have that responsibility and own that so that other people can learn from you. And of course you're going to be able to, kind of say, "Oh, now I can let other people lead me too," right? Because you can have that balance and you also are authentic enough in yourself to say, "This is what's important to me." And so, and you have the discernment to understand the difference between someone who is a true leader and someone who is just stuck in their ego, someone who is stuck in their, their own way of doing things, thinking that this is the only way, right? Like a true leader will never tell you that their way is the only way.
Yeah.
And understanding that everyone has a role, everyone works in unison, and we are all here together to really shift and create. And I just feel like this big, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's like a heart opening where people are opening up their hearts again and really shifting into this idea that it's okay to be myself
Mm.
and understanding that there is purpose in them being who they are. And each of us matters in our own way, even if it is
Mm.
to enjoy our life by ourselves. But you're still going to be a leader to somebody. You're still going to be that example. So just live true to your own values and,
Mhm.
do your best and just have fun.
Awesome. Very good. Love it. Great
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. How about you? Do you have anything that wants to come through?
So while you were talking, I kept the first thing that came through is just be bold. Be bold, unleash your magic and personal power. And then you just started talking about all of those things. So that was good.
Oh,
So on the same timeline, but this is what I saw. I saw actually a cloud with a huge lightning bolt coming out of it. And it was kind of like sometimes that lightning bolt can feel exciting, right? If it's not too powerful and it's like, and you're grounded, right? And then there's other times where that lightning bolt will come in and it's going to really jar you and it's going to make your hair stand up because there's going to be something that's pivoting it. And that when you were talking about like opening your heart, I'm going to slide a little human design in here. There's
perfect.
a, and if anybody knows human design, if you happen to have gate 7, it comes out of your heart center or the love and direction center. It's the one in the very, very middle of your chart. If you happen to have gate 7, that gate actually is one that is about leading, right? Leading in a way that you would know other people's strengths around you and you would want to enhance their strengths. And you would also know what they're not good at. But instead of directing and telling people what they're not good at or keep trying to make them good at it, you're the type of leader. And this is what I think you were saying too in a different way, is that when we lead from our hearts, from a leader who understands that we all have skills and we all have gifts and talents. And truly, a leader says, I know you're really good at this. Could you take this and run with it and let go and not micromanage or tell you you're wrong? And will also understand quietly, like for me, written word is not my thing. But in the past, I've had people tell me you have to get good at it. And I would just fall to pieces and crumble. It's like I'm better with my vocals than I am with my written, right? Because I'm not from here anyways. So, anyways, yeah, I love how you just said that. And that is the truth. So their message is we all have to step into our own empowerment. We all have to learn that whether you have gate 7 or not, that whenever you're in a leading role, whether it's for yourself, right? So if you're the leader of yourself, which we all are, would be, what are you good at? Girl, let's do that. Let's embrace that part of ourselves, right? You're not a good writer. That's okay, honey. Technology's caught up now. You don't need to be a good writer. I'll be a good writer for you. Like, thank you. So, yeah, I love that. What a great message.
No,
Great
that's
message.
perfect. And I love everything you said too. That was perfect. And I do love the human design aspect of it. I was like, oh, now I want to go see if I have gate 7. And if I don't, it's fine. I can,
It's
it's
eh,
not a problem. It's just, it does spark that curiosity, right? And
right,
I love,
right.
it just helps you get to know yourself a little bit better in a
Yeah,
different, you know.
truly. Well, this has been awesome, honey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This is amazing. I'm really glad we did this today and just, yeah, so we'll have to do this again. We're going to make this more of a reoccurring thing if you want to do that. That would
Yeah,
be,
and if people who are listening to this in the future, if you have questions, let us know. If you've got a question you'd like us
yeah.
to ask the guides, because we channel um pretty much, I mean, there isn't of the highest light, of course. People need to know that. Yes, yes, we know. We
Right.
are strong practitioners. We understand that. But if there's a question from any area, like we go to the cosmos, we
Yep.
we're open. So if you've got questions that you're curious about, put them in the comment section and we'll get to them.
Yeah. Sounds
Okay.
great.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a
Bye.
blessed day.
Thank you.